Prepstar Southwest recruiting podcast and blog. I want to share with you today on Jeff Wozniak, educator, former college athlete, parent of two student athletes, and an overall good guy. Jeff, I appreciate you being with us today for our inaugural podcast. So, what I'd like to do today is just kind of talk with you about your overall experience through the recruiting process with your son. Obviously, I'd love for you to share some bit about your experience with Prepstar. Um, so we'll dive right into it. So tell me, when did you begin, or when did you and your wife decide to begin the recruiting process for your son?
Well, since my son was little, he always wanted to play at a high level, D1 baseball. And we traveled the country a lot, and we showed him different colleges and things. And it was kind of our fault because Cal State Fullerton and Long Beach State's right down the street.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew I had something special when he was like 5 years old, and he was striking out eight-year-olds. And so he wanted to go to Mater Dei, but we told him if he went to Mater Dei, we couldn't afford, a 4-year college and a private school. So we did some research and came across Cypress High School, and they're a powerhouse in baseball. So we took a leap of faith. We did an inter-district transfer. He got in, and so when he put up some really good numbers as a freshman, he started to get some looks and some paperwork in his mailbox, and one was Prepstars. And that's when we met you, had a couple of phone calls back and forth, and I was pretty suspect of I thought, I knew a lot of people, and Coach Weber knew a lot of people, and so I made some phone calls, did my research, and kind of took a leap of faith, and ever since then it's been amazing experience.
So about how old was your son during about that time when you made
Right
that
right after his freshman year.
right after his
About
freshman year?
about 14, I think. 14,
It was
15.
about, yeah, I think if I remember right, he was just entering the summer. It was,
Yeah, just
I believe
entering
it
the
was
summer of
maybe,
his sophomore year.
right. Why did you feel that uh, that was the time to get started? Like parents, they ask me as a recruiter, when is the best time? Um, but but for you and your wife, what made you feel like that was, you knew the time was?
Um, I felt like I needed to give him every advantage I could at a younger age,
Mm-hmm.
and I knew that he was going to be a varsity guy as a sophomore, and he was going to compete. He wanted to play football as well, but when you go to a national powerhouse program, you got to pick and choose. And so he chose baseball, and I just wanted to make sure that I had the connections and the relationships and the awareness of all the different programs out there at a young age. So
Mm-hmm.
and my son, if he sees value in it, then he'll put his whole heart into it. If he doesn't see value in it, it's kind of like push it to the side. And so when he came across this program, he was all in. He's the guy that would sit down and write the emails, market himself,
Mm-hmm.
and he would Coach Mike was like good cop, bad cop with me. So when I would ask Coach Mike something, he would call my son and check in on him,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole kept him accountable at a high level. And he knew every
Okay.
time he walked onto that field, he had to produce.
Okay.
So that's kind of why we did it at such a young age, to keep him focused and make those connections. Even though coaches couldn't contact him, he could put his name out there and people could see and watch him.
Right. His son is the senior this year, 2020 graduate. So tell us where your son ended up at. I know it was a little bit of a crazy route there, but where's he playing ball next year in
He's gonna
college?
play in the Big 12 at Kansas State with Coach Hughes, and yeah, it's a great college town, and it's a great atmosphere, and it's a great academic school. And Coach Mike, this is probably new to you. He just was named Student Athlete of the Year at Cypress High School.
Wow.
So that's a big feather in his cap. Dude, I think it has to stem back to this program.
Do you feel that start process earlier gave him an advantage?
Oh, a huge advantage. I'm going to do that for my up and coming eighth grader. I'm going to do it early on. I might even do it as a freshman, just so he could get his name out there, and depends how hard he works and where he ends up on each level. And I could have game footage and show the progression. So I think earlier the better. If you start too late, look, coaches are recruiting eighth graders and ninth graders, and they're committing early, and it's a business. So if you're I know it's a game, but when you walk onto a high school campus, the first thing you need to do is make sure you got your grades, and make sure you're positioning yourself correctly. And that's what I've preached to both my kids. So earlier the better.
What do you feel was the most advantageous ask for him? Was it just the academics, or was it the accountability, or was it the exposure? What do you feel like, if you could put your finger on one thing, what do you feel like gave him the most leverage or the most opportunity?
The accountability piece.
Accountability.
And it's for me being a teacher and my wife being a teacher, it's the whole triangle effect. You got your program that you play in over the summertime,
right,
and those coaches, and they're connected to certain coaches and certain programs. And then you have your own high school team where you play for pride, and you have your coach there. And so you have to represent your school well, and you have to get your grades, but it's also the program, because it's like a triangle effect.
right.
You need every piece to the puzzle to complete the circle. And for my son, he's kind of a bookworm nerd, but he's a great athlete. So he really wanted to position himself correctly, why he knew he still had to work out and put himself first.
Right. Right. Yeah, you touched on that. So your son, he played on some pretty competitive teams throughout high school. A lot of the coaches were real well connected, and you've already mentioned his high school team was a top tier team in Southern California. So what do you feel like prompted you to look at outside resources? You mentioned kind of the triangle effect. Like, was it that you wanted control over the process? Was it that you felt like he was going to get underexposed, or like what did you feel like as a parent? Why did you look at outside resources?
For like Prepstar, you mean? To join
like
a Prepstar?
Yeah.
Usually colleges look at big organizations, and I'm not a fan of that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of chase training to get my kid better. And I think that was the huge part of Prepstars, because Prepstars gave my kid the exposure that he needed, and we could track coaches that looked at him, and we could sit down and talk dollars and cents of colleges, even if he didn't get a scholarship, and we just became more aware of what was out there. And so it's kind of where we played to get better. We didn't play in the big program because it was pay and play.
Mm-hmm.
So we chased a lot of the training. I put my money into training my son, and into a good agent or a family advisor, or somebody,
right. Family advisor. That was
a family advisor to help guide my son in the right direction.
Okay, cool. So did you get any criticism for that?
Absolutely.
Like negative feedback and stuff. And tell us about the criticism, and then now that your son's going to a Big 12 school and lockdown, his future is set right now. So what would you have to say to those critics now?
Well, actually, one of his biggest critics is one of his biggest fans. It's his high school baseball coach. and Coach Weber knows everybody. He's put guys in the big leagues. He's put guys all over college campuses. And he said, "Well, why do you need a program like that? I know a lot of people." And I said, "Well, it's just one less trip to McDonald's or Starbucks for me. I'm going to invest in my son, and I just feel like I need that extra piece. Maybe that you don't have a connection to a certain college, because at the end of the day, the some guy, smart guy sitting over that in that chair over there that I'm talking to, Coach Mike, said, "Hey, you could chase any college you want, but at the end of the day, it's the college that picks you." We had no idea. K-State, he was Nebraska, Utah was on the board, Nevada, a bunch of schools. But at the end of the day, we had no idea we were going to end up K-State.
Right.
So he was, I think he was, and we didn't know. At the end of the day, we didn't know that Coach Weber knew Coach Taylor at K-State. We had no idea. So we did the research, we did the homework, we did everything, and then that just kind of solidified the deal for us.
Right. Okay. So tell Brett, your son committed as a junior. Describe his recruiting process. It was a little bit abnormal than most athletes go through, but at least for us, or at least from my experience, it was kind of initially it was kind of fairy tale. You know, everything seemed to fall into place, but some things took a little bit of a twist. Tell our listeners about your son's particular experience in particular.
It was a wild ride. It was a very wild ride. Like I said, we used the program to target certain coaches and colleges, and he always wanted to be a Florida Gator. Mm-hmm. So we sent him to Florida Gator camp and realized you don't need to go outside of Florida to get your guys. And so why are they going to invest in a California kid and give them lots of money when they have homegrown talent, and the way they pay their taxes back there, college is pretty much paid for. So he was kind of crushed. Man, I always wanted to be a Gator. I always wanted to be like Tim Tebow. But then that's when he had to create his own list of colleges and stuff like that. And so he targeted 5 schools, and we made some phone calls. Coach Mike did for us, helped us out. And he got a recruiting trip to the University of Nebraska. And Coach Silva and Coach Erstad and Coach Kirby were amazing to him, and took a great trip, wined and dined him, showed him everything, bought it. He bought in, they bought in. His academics was a huge plus. A couple weeks later, they offered him a decent package, and he was locked in to go to the University of Nebraska. And then after the college season ended last year, Nebraska got knocked out in the regional, or in one of the upper level tournaments to get to Omaha. And Coach Erstad had a meeting with his coaches and players, and next thing you know, he just retires. Right. And so we're crushed. He was buying in. He loved the coaching staff. He loved the school, but it was more about the coaching staff, and he used his visit already there. So he went and played in Texas in some national champion high school thing. And he was USA Perfect Game stuff was coming up, and he was still playing those tournaments. But nobody would really talk to him because he was still committed to the University of Nebraska. Right. So it was for like a month. We didn't hear from the Nebraska coaches, so we had to reach out to them, and it went kind of south real fast in a phone call and a couple text messages. And that's when my son decided that he didn't feel confident to go there anymore, and he decommitted.
So tell me about that real quick. Like a lot of our families, you mentioned something where I try to counsel our kids, our athletes to commit to the school and not necessarily to the coaches, but that's such a hard thing to do, because those relationships are really important. I know in my daughter's own situation, the relationship with the pitching coach made a huge difference in her overall choice of colleges. So when that happened, when you knew that Erstead down over there at Nebraska retired, like, tell me, like, what was the feeling for you? Was it disbelief? Was it like just?
Well, we were kind of all in shock. It was kind of hearsay. So when we jumped on the Twitter and we jumped on everywhere, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, this is really happening!" And so my son's always kind of put himself in the right situation and shook hands with everybody, and you don't know who's watching you.
Right.
You never know who's watching you, and
Right.
so he's always out there marketing himself and putting himself in the right situation. And he just didn't feel confident about going to that school anymore because he already used his trip there, and he had no idea. The coaches, when they talked to him, they said, "Oh, we're going to have to do some background check on you." They didn't even know what his scholarship package was or anything after a month.
Right.
And so as a parent, I'm like, are you serious? Like, I was
Right.
shocked. And my son's confident enough that he said, "You know what? I'll go earn myself another scholarship. It's okay."
So tell
So
me about that. Like, I remember our conversations during that time, but we kind of had a different approach when Brett committed. But was the program helpful? Because ideally, the program is designed to get the kid signed. I always say signed, sealed, and delivered. But I mean, Brett was basically off the market, and you mentioned that yourself. But how was the program was the program still helpful to you? And when you guys just knew that he was going to decommit, did you go back to the coaches that were on his that had looked at his recruiting profile and that you had connected with before? Did you pick a bunch of schools out of a hat? What was your approach, and was the program helpful during that time, or share that with me?
absolutely. What sold me on the program in the first place was Coach Mike said something to the fact like, "Hey, if your kid goes to college and it doesn't work out and he wants to go to a different college, this is how the program works. We'll still help your son get to another school." And so basically I had that confidence in Prepstars that if he decommitted, that Coach Mike was still on the back burner and he would help us get my son to a good place. And through a CBA program, he got some coaches got word of mouth, and Coach Taylor from K-State, we were looking around. My son always wanted to go Midwest, big football, good academics. And so I called Coach Mike, and I was like, "Hey, this guy wants to talk to Brett. He wants to come see him play. Can you make a phone call for me?" And so next thing you know, Prepstar's there for me to make that phone call. And there's the triangle again.
Right.
Prepstars, coach, player.
And
It
I
always
saw
come.
yeah, and we could, the maybe 10, 12 times the coach reviewed the profile. So we were able to track that, and that was a really big helpful part of experience. I can remember that experience where you and I were talking, and I thought K-State, like a scratch in my head, thinking
Yeah,
Kansas.
yeah,
But I did, after all. Nebraska's pretty remote, so it didn't surprise me.
yeah.
But
Kansas is a little warmer and less snow, so I think
a little less snow.
you won in that deal.
Yeah, and
You
he's
know,
got big comp.
here's my advice. Like, let the program work and take a few trips. Don't lock yourself into the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we did, because we said, "Oh man, they like you. This is a good thing." But you should probably go to use the program for leverage. That's what I would tell parents. Use the program for leverage. Don't get caught up in the mix. Don't let your heart, let your head think over your heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing. If I had to redo it all over again, I would let my head govern more than my heart, and let the program develop more And so he only took two trips, and he took it one, not a where I paid for it. What's that? What would you call it?
Yeah.
An unofficial visit to Cal Baptist, and they loved him as well. But yeah, I would say take your trips, take your time, have your self-worth, know what you're worth, raise the stakes a little bit.
Right.
Yeah. So that's kind of what happened the second time around, because then we had something to look at. We just didn't know. We were kind of rookies. We were like the freshmen coming into the program.
Right.
So we used the program all the way up, and then we kind of like veered from it a little bit, and then we said, "Oh no." Then we went right back to it, and that was the huge plus.
Right.
That was the huge plus of the program.
If I remember right, he's probably about between 60 and 90 days he was committed again.
Yeah, it was quick.
It was
it was he was in Texas playing on ESPNU, the National High School Championship stuff. He decommitted probably like Thursday night, Friday night, and we were on a plane on Monday, flying out to Kansas.
Right.
That's how fast. And, the first phone call was like, it was like Jerry Maguire. Coach Mike, are you there? We need your help. And next thing you know, it didn't matter what time it was. Coach Mike was on his computer talking to people and locking things in. It was crazy. At first, it was like Coach Taylor called and he was like, "Hey, we want to get Brett out here to Kansas, but Coach Hughes is going to be in the Cape, so he's not going to be around." We're like, "Okay, we'll hang out for a couple weeks, no problem." And next day he calls, he's like, "Nope, Coach is coming back from the Cape on Sunday. He's going to be here Monday, so we're going to fly you out." We're like, "Excuse me?" Mm-hmm. So it was just a fast, quick turnaround, and it comes down to the program. It comes down to,
I think there was a trip to Arizona on that as well, wasn't there?
University I forgot about that one too. Yeah. That was before that was between Nebraska and Kansas. He went to U of A.
Right. So he'd done a couple other visits along the way. So now that your son is about to graduate, unfortunately, one of the members of the 2020.
That's why I'm glad. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm glad you're saying that. Go ahead, and I have a great answer for you about this program. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, tell me. If you had the chance to do it all again, would you do it again?
I would so do it again, because this is unprecedented times with this COVID-19, and my son would be so out in the cold if I didn't start him early in the program. Mm-hmm. Because he signed his NLI, he's locked in, he has a scholarship, he's guaranteed a spot on the team. And if we would have waited to do it later on, he could be a guy out in the cold, because the NCAA has flipped back those seniors and they got their year back. So my son's still in a great place, because K-State has 8 seniors and they only have 8 guys in their recruiting class. So it's not going to be that big of a flip. We're going to be so much better. But a lot of programs, their kids are going to be out in the cold, because the junior colleges gave their year back. I know Texas has like 14 guys in their recruiting class. And so what does that say about their seniors? It's top loaded. So that was the biggest thing. I said, oh man, this is a blessing that we used Prepstars and we got them going so fast, so early, and got him the exposure. Who knows where he would end up? I mean, he had a great season last year. I mean, but still, you can have a great season and you can still be left out in the cold.
Right. And there's a lot of 2020s right now that are still in the spot, and I get those calls every day, and there's just nothing that can be done for them. When you're so late in the game of recruiting and no one knows who you are, it's almost impossible to place an athlete.
Yeah, it's sad for there's a lot of amazing talent out there.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys are not going to be going places. And junior college, it's going to be hard to get into a junior college too.
Right. And like you said, I think with the extended rosters and the extended eligibility, I think you'll see some teams from larger schools are going to retain a lot of players. I don't know about the small schools, but I definitely think that the larger schools are going to retain a lot of guys, and that's going to be a hard. Like you said, there's just not going to be spots. So
Here's the other thing, as using the program, you as a player and as parents, you got to know your son's self-worth, because I know my son plays with a lot of guys, and they committed really early, and took themselves off the map. So they start at one school. They think, and since we live in Southern California, we'll just say Long Beach State, for example. Kid signs gives a verbal to Long Beach State when he could be a Vanderbilt kid, or it could be an LSU kid.
right.
A couple years of hard work changed your life. So that's the thing. Like, you sign too early, so you got two effects. Either you got the kid that says, "Oh man, I'm set, I'm good," and stops working,
Right.
or you got the kid that goes, "Man, I want to be better than the kid that they invested in." So I would just say wait, use the program, evaluate your situation before you jump to anything.
Right.
Let the program work.
And that's what I kept telling you.
I know.
What I kept telling you.
I had
All the
many,
time.
many, many nights of tears with Coach Mike.
I
Man,
understand.
it's not. What am I doing? He's like, just let it work. Just let it work.
Trust the process. I can remember a couple of those conversations, especially junior year. And I think a lot of parents have that angst. It's just a lot of parents they invest a lot of time and energy and money and all that stuff, and we want. I went through it with my own daughter, so we all want something out of that, and I think there's a lot of pressure and a lot of angst, and um, that's one of the things I enjoy about what I do is being able to meet neat, interesting people like yourself and get to develop a relationship with them. And the other thing I like is just being able to walk alongside people through that, because it's not fun. And it's nice to have somebody to kind of lean on. So,
Let me just say, Coach Mike knows good restaurants, and he always brings the box of tissues for his clients. So, yeah, it's a process. You just got to trust. Yeah, you got it. It's grueling, but we all have to understand that college sports is a business. At the end of the day, they don't care what stats your kids puts up. They don't want to see stats. They want to see videos. And after they see the videos, remember that college coaches get fired if your kids don't produce.
Right.
At the end of the day, they could care less. My son hit 400 and was 11-0 with like a 1 ERA. They didn't see it. They didn't see that stuff. They want to know that he could play, that he's a good student, that he's well-rounded. He's going to represent the school well. He's not going to be on social media doing stupid things.
Right.
They want to see video, because at the end of the day, if your kid doesn't produce for them, when when your kid's in their program, they're getting fired.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
Right.
So use the program, chase training, and stay off social media.
Stay off. Absolutely. Be smart on it. Use it to your
advantage.
Yeah, sure.
That's right.
One last question. I would say that your experience overall was pretty positive. I'm not going to say it was all perfect and wasn't always roses and sunshine. I know we had some conversations along the way, but we're talking 3 years, almost 3.5, almost 4 years we've known each other now. Have you told anybody else about the program? Did you ever make a recommendation to a family or a teammate? I consider you an advocate, but just your overall experience, did you share that with people? And if so, like, what kind of results did they get? Was it, kind of, you stick your neck out there. So I think that's what a lot of families are sometimes, but in your experience.
I'm a total advocate. I even put up a sign at the high school and sponsored Prepstars and put it up there because of what Coach Mike's done for my kid. The problem is that certain kids started later. One started as a senior. He had multiple colleges that wanted to talk to him, but he wanted to stay in Southern California.
Right.
But when you start the program so late, sometimes you don't get what you want, but you are going to get a college in, and you're going to get a good education, and you're going to have to take a risk. And sometimes you might, if you take a leap of faith, you might land on your feet.
Yeah.
So the program.
Yeah. So you got D1 offers from East Coast schools.
Oh yeah. So the program did work for this one young man, but he chose to go the junior college route, and it wasn't anything based on the program, because the program did work for him in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
And he had lots of offers. So, and I always market to other parents and say, start them young.
Yeah.
Let the program work.
Call me.
So, yeah.
Call Coach Mike.
Yeah, and now that my other son doesn't play baseball, he plays lacrosse, and that's even more competitive. Coach Mike does volleyball, he does water polo. So my son has a lot of friends that do other sports, and I'm like, hey, if you want something, and it's a great avenue. So I pass out his name all the time, and that it comes down to parents. They think some parents think they could do it all. I was one of them, but then I realized, boy, I need that extra piece of the triangle.
Yeah.
Because coaches don't want to talk to dads. They want to talk to somebody else that goes and evaluates other players, and they have their own take, and that's what they do for a living. So you got to trust the guys that do this for a living, not parents, because we're all biased. Right. Oh, my kid's better than him. Yeah. Well, okay. So you got to have an outside resource to help you out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that. Well, Jeff, I appreciate you being on and talking with us about your experience. I've enjoyed working with your family. I'm looking forward to working with your younger son. He's already a stellar athlete, and I'm already excited about that. And get a chance to exercise a little lacrosse once again. So my boys play lacrosse, and I coach lacrosse as well. So that's one of my in sports that I really enjoy. So if there's anything that I haven't asked that you would want me to ask, what might that be if I've missed something today?
No, I just gave you one more extra scholarship. Baseball gets 11.7 and lacrosse gets 12.6. So I gave you a little bit more wiggle room.
A little more wiggle room. I appreciate that. Well, thanks for being on with us today. I appreciate the time. I know it's Easter weekend, and even though we have not a lot going on, but still Saturday morning. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. So thanks, and I hope everyone enjoyed this inaugural podcast interview. So thanks again for being with us.
All right. Thanks, Coach Mike. Appreciate it.